This week on the Squatchers Lounge podcast, David and the Reverend Jeff switch gears and go down memory lane. Tonight we're going to talk about Jerry Crew. Who was he? What was his story? And why is he important to Bigfooting? Because after all, with everything in this subject, there's more to it than meets the eye. And that's where we come in. Self-important assholes. So without further ado, I'd like to give to you the man who's probably got some more current events up his sleeve, the Reverend Jeff Kelly.
Welcome, everybody, to the Squatchers Lounge podcast. Season 2, episode 22. Imagine that, people. We're already up to episode 22 this season. Must be fantastic to be us. As always, I do have with me the greatest announcer man in Squatchers Lounge podcast history, Mr. David Father Batorf. How you doing, buddy?
Doing good. I just fresh up from a little nap and get ready for tonight's topic. Actually, I think it's going to be interesting going and taking a look back at some of the old timers, as it were. You know, we have a lot of new people are not new listeners, but listeners who are new to the field of Bigfooting, and I still only consider myself sophomoric in this field, so it's actually going to be good for me, even in learning and research purposes, to go back through and look at some of these old timers. So I'm glad we're doing this.
Yeah, exactly. You know, there was a lot of negativity that was surrounding the podcast, and we were all literally just sick of it together. And David and I were just like, we're going in a direction that neither one of us really wants to go into. So what are we going to do about this? We're going to make it better. We know you guys are entertained out there. That's fine. But daggone, it's got to be fun for us, or what the hell is the point of doing it? So, we're going, like David said, back to the fundamentals and back to the basics. And there are literally a couple of thousands of brand new newbies in here who hear the name Jerry Crew and don't have a damn clue as to who the hell he was. So come up here in about 10 minutes and we're going to be talking about that. However, as some of you people say, Reverend Jeff, why is it that you'll find it necessary to pick on people? Well, I'm not picking on people. I'm pointing out shit that's wrong in hopes that it'll get fixed right. And one of the things that we bring up quite often is this one particular research fella, the man who seems to think he owns a group of some sort, Matthew Johnson. Matthew Johnson and I do not see eye to eye on many things, and nor do I care about that. But apparently, he's got an open letter to Wally Hersom, Uncle Wally, as we call him. He's benevolent Bigfoot benefactor, the Triple B, that everybody's really looking for. And unfortunately, Matthew Johnson doesn't have a benevolent Bigfoot benefactor of his own. And he's gone so far now to publicly put out an open letter to who we call Uncle Wally, in hopes that, well, Uncle Wally will become his uncle too and fund his Bigfoot researching. Now, David, I know you don't really like to be the jackass of the group, but, I mean, come on now. How far do you have to go that when you fail at selling sippy cups and onesies, or whatever the hell he was selling to fund his research last year, to now begging the man who already has half a dozen Bigfoot groups under his belt that he's taking care of his own, that, none of them are good enough. You need to come to me because I got all kind of evidence. Look, I have track casts and this and that. How am I supposed to feel about that, David?
At that point, that just becomes a little bit too far. I mean, I can't. It's one thing to present this evidence that's somewhat lackluster, and create your groups and have discussions, and that's fine. But when it comes down to, somebody coming and requesting money, like from not from a crowdfunding source, like, do a Kickstarter, do a GoFundMe, do something. Don't say, Wally, you should give me money, because that crosses a line.
That crosses a huge line. I mean, for goodness sakes, nobody pays for my research. No one's paid for the last 2 expeditions that I've been on in the last 6 months. No one's paying for the one next month. I do this because I want an answer. Do it because I'm a good woodsman. And I do it because we have a collective group of great researchers that are looking for an answer and believe collectively we can come up with something. And guess what? Wally doesn't pay for those. Okay? Wally helps out with some equipment for some of the bigger guys. Wally helps out with the bigger things that we really can't afford, or we wouldn't have any thermal footage of any of these Bigfoot. Uncle Wally has bought the thermal cameras for, well, both the Sierra Site project and the Olympic project. So both of the thermals that are kind of floating around out there that have really good thermal footage, you know, came from Uncle Wally. I think Stacey Brown's is really probably the only one that didn't happen from. And Matthew, buddy, what proof do you really have?
There was actually a scathing article posted recently by Sharon Hill, actually asking just that. Matthew Johnson was being, calling the kettle black and saying that, well, where's your results? Like all of these people who, probably could be talking about us, making statements and this, that, and the other. Where is your proof? Where is your proof? Well, we don't have any, but we do have an opinion in a YouTube channel, so there you go. But again, so where is his proof? And don't take somebody's credibility as stated until you look into it, because as she put in her article, just because she has a degree in geology doesn't help her in her cryptozoological interests.
Right. Exactly. And, I have a degree in animal biology, doesn't help me in my software engineering career. It's wonderful that you have a child psychology degree. If you were working with, human children, I'd say, well, that's wonderful. But you don't have a zoology degree. You really don't have any wood skills. Or you'd know that it's probably not Bigfoot eating your peanut butter and jammy sandwiches. You'd know what the sound of great horned owls are. There are several things that tell me that you're not a woodsman and you're not a biologist, but yet you have these incredible claims that you have. And just like Steven Stufer said the other day in the Coalition, incredible claims require incredible proof. And I said, no, incredible claims require a big mouth and a YouTube channel, and I'm living proof of that. However, the rebuttal to that was big claims require big proof if you want people to believe you. And I said, well, I don't expect anyone to believe me. So therein lies the problem with Matthew Johnson's. He's got all these claims. Lots of people have been there, but no one's really walked away with the goods yet that I know of. What about you, David?
No, there's people that have had interesting experiences and subjective experiences, but not the same experiences that are being presented in other places. And I don't know, we've been picking on Dr. Johnson for a little bit here, and really the reason we're doing that is because of him putting his not even not a metaphorical, not a proverbial, it's just he just put his hand out publicly, and that's just not.
Yeah,
that's not what we should be doing as a group.
No, and it's not a group. That's the thing. There's nobody has appealed to Wally in public in a forum like this amongst the entire Bigfoot community, save for Matthew Johnson. Why is he special? And why should we just ignore that? I understand Dr. Johnson's had a brain injury, but he's not Gary Busey. Okay, that's the one thing I can say about that. He's not Gary Busey. He's not disabled to the point that he needs to be handled with special care, or he'd have a special squatching helmet. So if that's not the case, then we must hold him to the same levels of respect that we hold anybody else. And anybody else standing there with their hand out, just like has been begged for before, show me across America. I want to film a Bigfoot movie across America, and I want you to pay for it. We saw that fail too for the same reasons. Why should we fund your projects?
And again, and it boils down to where is the incredible potential for incredible proof for your incredible claims, and what is the purpose? Does your want align with Wally's want?
Right.
Because Wally wants you to bag one and drag it out of the woods and show him.
Right. Yeah. Wally wants the monkey, brought in before him. I mean, and
Yeah, like that. That's the whole idea. He wants proof.
no doubt that it's not a man in a suit. Let's take biopsies of the thing and prove that it's not a suit.
That's what. So, but that's not what Dr.
No,
Johnson is wanting to
Dr.
do.
Johnson,
So that's again, you think one step ahead of that business venture, and why would he do that?
right. Now, the hard-on people, so like you say, put it out to the people. If the people see fit to fund your project, well, then so be it. Maybe you do have something going on for that. But to ask in public for a handout, a grant, a research grant, when there's no grant money out here for Bigfoot because Bigfoot isn't proven to exist yet, nor is it even proven to be endangered. And I got news for you. Just because Bigfoot is proven to exist doesn't mean that it's going to be endangered, number one. Number two, doesn't mean you're going to make a penny for helping to protect it. So there's we're a decade away from protecting Bigfoot once we find it.
Yeah, maybe a decade away from that too.
Well, I mean, with the technology that's coming out in thermal cameras and night vision cameras and all of that good stuff, yeah, maybe not so. 2014 feels like the year. I mean, look at me, man. I am ready. I'm ready to get out into the woods. And the reason that I'm growing all this out is, 7,000 feet in June in the Sierras is not a warm place. That's all I can say about that. But that's, there's a reason. But, this could really seriously be the year of the Squatch. So tonight we're going to go back and focus on where did all of this come from. Everybody says, it was the Patterson-Gimlin film in 1967. That would actually be wrong. There's a lot of stuff that happened prior to 1967, which is actually why Patterson was out there trying to make a documentary about the big hairy beast of the Pacific Northwest in the first place. Am I wrong, David?
That is correct, and that leads directly into tonight's topic and the story of Jerry Crew. I mean, Jeff, you're the storyteller here. You're a man.
Yeah. So okay, let's go back to the very very beginnings of what and who Jerry Crew was. Now, 1950,
57, 58.
1950, late 57, early 58, there are huge footprints found in fresh logging areas in the Bluff Creek, Willow Creek mountain ranges. And we're talking about footprints unlike anybody's ever seen before. And originally, no one really knew what to make heads or tails of it. But in the end, what it came down to be was Bigfoot was born. The term Bigfoot was actually born in the newspaper of the Humboldt Times in 1958.
Yeah, Humboldt County Times in 1958. Yeah, and basically, so like these footprints that they were reporting on, they were on logging roads. They were actually doing, they were building roads.
This was all fresh plow. None of this was old growth. This was all freshly disturbed. Reasons that Bigfoot would be moving in the area in places that they normally wouldn't be is because these great big friggin' machines. Now, mind you, 1950s technology, these were tractors. These were just big log-slinging tractors and trucks, clanking and clanging and barely able to move along. We still had drum brakes in the 50s. So, I mean, we're talking about crap clanking its way through the woods here, cutting down and logging all of these trees to go out for wood products.
Spewing black tar, almost liquid out the pipes, right?
Right. And, you've got these untouched forested areas of the Sierras. I mean, okay, the Sierras. This is, the Sierras ain't even on that map. The Sierras are over here. It's a giant friggin' mountain range that runs all the way down the side of California. And no one had touched it prior to that. I mean, it was literally untapped, vast lands. And if you go up there now, it pretty much still is.
Yeah, save a few roads, like I say, which is kind of the only thing that's been laid down there, and that's what they were doing. They were doing all the original, clearing and grading, and that's why they got these really great footprints, is because they were actually, they were making roads, so you have to make a flat surface to then pour the road into, but. So Jerry Crew, he was just a tractor operator.
Yeah. So here's the actual storyline, and I'll tell you I'll tell you a little nighttime story, and we'll tell you the story of Jerry Crew. Now, on August 27, 1958, a tractor driver named Gerald Crew drove out to his job, which at that time was working with the crew pushing a new lumber access road into the uninhabited and only loosely surveyed territory near the borders of Humboldt and Del Norte counties. Now, in Northwest California, Jerry Crew is a native of Slayer Township in Humboldt County, and he's an active member of the Baptist Church, and he's a teetotaler. So he's not a drunk, and he's not some kind of, he's not a doper, he's not a mushroom head. And, he has a reputation for honesty and level-headedness. So this is a guy who is not a drunk. He's not some kind of, he's an upstanding member of society. He's out there riding a tractor, building new roads, and he comes across what look like giant man prints.
Yeah, naked, unshoed, with toes, a ball of a foot, and a heel. Looks like naked man prints, but they're really, really large.
Right. Now, sometime later, we're going to go ahead and touch on another character that really doesn't have enough material to have his own show, would be Ray Wallace. Now, a lot of people out there have heard the name Ray Wallace, but really don't understand who or what he was. Ray Wallace was the boss of the road building crew that Jerry Crew was working for while he was out there building roads for this logging company. And he was known as a prankster. He liked to pull pranks. He liked to do things. And many of the Bigfoot stories that were told on site to the men, the large hairy men that live in the woods around there, had actually been told to them by Ray Wallace. So, of course, when these giant footprints are discovered by Jerry, he goes to Ray and says, dude, what's this? And Ray says, oh, let's go take a look at them. And hence the meeting of where Jerry Crew and Ray Wallace come together in the Bigfoot world.
Yeah, and so the interesting thing that people have to decide for themselves basically is, did Ray Wallace start hoaxing these footprints that he's supposedly had done before or after this 1958 meeting and seeing this and doing the whole thing? I mean, there's a huge, Humboldt County is all, prior to this, back to the 1900s, has had stories of the wild man, the stories of this, that, and the other. So that's not something that's new here. They're not discovering anything aside from a really great track fight. Actually, I have a nice photo of Jerry Crew. That's not stretching right. Anyway, holding up his track here. I'll just do a screen share instead. But the bottom line is that this is a totally different track than what we're seeing from Ray Wallace. I actually have in here, hopefully you can see this reasonably, the Ray Wallace tracks with this interesting little foot bump and these nice rigid toes here that look like it was cut out of a piece of wood, because that's what it was cut out of. Here is this Jerry Crew track. Here is the Roger Patterson track from the Bluff Creek area, and then this is the Patty track.
Now, something I want to point out while you have this graphic up for everybody is the fact that these tracks are actually being compared to the wooden plank foot. Now, we haven't really talked about where the wooden plank foot has come from, and we're going to talk about that next. These are not being compared to a track cast of Wallace's. So we're going to get into that in just a moment, but that's where the comparison is here. The comparison on the left side of each one of these is the Wallace plank foot, and on the right side of each one of these is the actual casted Bigfoot track of a possible North American Bigfoot.
Correct, and basically, this. If you look at the Jerry Crew,
they look nothing alike.
Track, there's no way that what Ray Wallace was, even if he had crafted a finer hoaxing piece, that he's going to be able to to create this track. Jerry Crew's track is brilliant. It looks like a living foot. It looks like an oversized foot of a person.
Right.
More so than some other tracks.
It doesn't have an instep.
Yeah. There are a few things about it that's interesting. It looks like
the big toe and the second toe are about roughly the same length, which is something else that we look for in Bigfoot tracks versus.
Yeah, and a nice flat foot, and so, but again, this is something that looks better than what people say. Oh, well, Jerry Crew, he knew Ray Wallace. Well, you know who told Jerry Crew to cast this track? Was Bob Titmus.
Right, it wasn't even Ray Wallace.
Ray Wallace, so Bob Titmus was living in California and owned a taxidermy shop prior to him moving to British Columbia and becoming great friends with John Green and all these other Four Horsemen names that we'll probably get around to talking about at some point. But yeah, so it wasn't Ray Wallace who had Jerry Crew cast this track. It was Bob Titmus because of inquiry and just intrigue about his find. He was legitimately interested.
That's exactly right. Now, one of the things that I had found upon my journey of what is Bigfoot and Ray Wallace was the story of Ivan T. Sanderson, who wrote in an article for America's an Abominable Snowman in 1959. Now, he spent considerable time with Jerry Crew, which is actually where I got the story from earlier. That was his telling of how Jerry originally found the Bigfoot tracks themselves. This is, he spent a lot of time with this guy, hung out with him, found him to be credible, found him to be, an upstanding citizen, not a drunkard. For no reason did he have any reason to doubt the validity of these tracks that he actually found. Now, as I promised just a minute ago, we're going to talk about where that Wallace track actually came from. Now, let's get a little bit better view of a comparison here for you now. I actually borrowed this graphic from the BFRO, so thank you very much, gentlemen. On the left-hand side is this Wallace plank, and on the right-hand side is the cast track from 1958 from Bluff Creek. Now, Ray Wallace, when he died in 2002, and it wasn't up until this time that anybody had really heard anything about this, his family found, quote unquote, these wooden Bigfoot planks out back in his shed and decided to let the hoax out about Bigfoot, that Ray Wallace was originally behind the Bigfoot, and this is how he did it, getting pulled behind the tractors and leaving these stomps up there. And it was for a Bigfoot documentary, as usual. These types of things kind of get embellished and stretched out. But Wallace himself has never really been tied to these planks whatsoever, outside of his family saying that they're his.
Exactly. I mean, it's probable that somebody created the plank and somebody and he was involved in a lot of these things. But was he involved in perpetrating hoaxes? Like, people said that he used to go onto his job sites and to play pranks on people because they would freak out. Well, was it a situation like this Jerry Crew situation where he's like, oh, when I go back to, I forget where, was it Washington that he lived in or wherever, or Oregon, I don't know. When I go back up north, it would be just great if I just did this on every job site I had and freak out the guys, and it'll be fun, pranksters.
Right, but that's not the case though, because the track records don't follow Ray Wallace from location to location. So the track actually cast, stay around Bluff Creek. They go up through Willow Creek. They come down into the Sierras. They've been known to come this far down here into the Redwoods of Oakland. And I was actually up in the Redwoods of Oakland today, and I could tell you, if I was a Squatch, I could disappear up there, no problem. I don't think we have a number of families living up there any longer because of the use of public land that humans have in this region. We've so overpopulated it that if there were any up there at some time, they're long gone. But if they were moving through the region, they could still move right along the city of Oakland. Think about that. 1.2 million people, and Sasquatch could still move along the ridge of those people and never be seen by a human being.
Well, exactly. It's there. There's the cutoff of the wild areas. I mean, once population drops to less than 2 people per square mile, game on. You can have bears, you can have elk, you can have all the large fauna that you can't have when there's a density of even 20 people per square mile. Like that you can't make that happen.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that you have to start to really question yourself. When I first heard the stories of Jerry Crew was, In Search of 1977, Leonard Nimoy. It was probably a rerun when I was 6 or 7, but, that was really the first cognitive thought of, ooh, Bigfoot, how cool is that? And the story of Jerry Crew, and finding the tracks along while making the logging roads and all of that. All of that was included, but none of the hoax stuff, like I said, even came into being until 2002. And now people think as though that's a fact when it's not. I mean, it's never been proven that he hoaxed anything anywhere, nor is there a track cast on record in plaster that anyone took out of the ground from where he left tracks behind.
He could have, again, messing with his crew, he could have started, a little, cultural upstart of people that are, nervous about going into a particular area. Or he could have only used those tracks a few times. Or he could have been using them for many years. Who knows? There's a lot of people who speculate. But just to put it into perspective, at the same time when he was down in the Redwoods, I mean, John Green is taking reports and casts up in British Columbia, so that it's impossible for those to be going on simultaneously. So you can't just Ray Wallace was the hoaxer, he did the whole thing. Ray Wallace did, Ray Wallace, Bob Titmus, and Ivan Sanderson, which is another black strike against Jerry Crew, because most of the stories that I've heard or found are from articles written by Ivan Sanderson, which we know that he's got a colorful past, to say the least, and maybe that's not the best place. That's like getting your information from Tom Biscardi. Ivan Sanderson was the Tom Biscardi of yesteryear, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
so there could be the kernel of truth, but there's also all these other reports. Again, the Humboldt County Times and all the newspaper articles and those other things. That's, you get the short version. And that's where I'm taking a lot more credence than everything that says copyright Ivan D. Sanderson from this article or that paper. That is, whatever.
And, that's really what it comes down to questioning, too, is was there the same debauchery surrounding it all then as though there is now? And I say that in jest, but it's kind of true. What was perpetrated upon us with the Bigfoot BBC Channel 4 buffoonery was debauchery. I mean, it really was. I mean, it was, we're going to send this great guy, and he's the best guy in genetics ever, and we're going to send him to America and collect all of your Bigfoot samples and give you an answer. And the answer is a wolf, a turkey, a porcupine, a horse, that all could have been identified under a microscope instead of spending $500,000 or $250,000 or whatever the hell was spent on that stupid friggin' research project.
And we had people telling us that people were shuffling these through real scientists to really rule out these other known animals. And I'm sorry, a canine is a canine, unless you ask a particular question, put a hair under a microscope, say, is this a bear? And they say no. Okay, well, you didn't ask me if it was a dog. Nope, that's all I needed.
Right, exactly. Well, kind of like with the Ketchum study, does it have human DNA? Please tell me it has human DNA. Please tell me it has human DNA. Well, it does have human DNA. Okay, I don't want to hear anymore. That's enough.
That's it. That's good. I am sold.
It's a porcupine lemur human. That's enough. It's human. That's all I wanted to hear. I mean, at what point did it get... From the beginning, even prior to Gimlin, it seems like people have wanted to get something out of it. And I just don't understand what it is there is to get out of it.
Exactly. Somebody like Biscardi or somebody like Sanderson makes sense to me because they were show people,
B.T. Barnum.
E.T. Barnum, like, come see the giant skeletons.
That's
and come
right.
see the, like all I mean, Chupacabra and all that other stuff. Like, but, so this article by Ivan Sanderson that I'm just kind of looking at right now was written in 1959 for
You got the same one.
True magazine, probably.
Yep.
So capitalizing on something that was published, if I look over here in 1958 in the Humboldt County News, so that's where you have to take that little leap back and be like, okay, well, Ivan Sanderson didn't have anything to do with this except for he went back and he did an interview for a magazine that he was producing and publishing, much like that like Tom Biscardi would have done, like go follow up on something and then produce it in a larger than life way, and then like Melba Ketchum did. It's like, I'm going to take my 5 minutes of fame and I'm going to publish it myself, because that way
no one else will.
Nobody can tell you what to do with it. But again, the fact that this was published in more than one paper, the Humboldt County Times, and then there was another one, I believe it was, because BC at the time was like, they put up, if you want to go back and look for old articles about Sasquatch, and look up Sasquatch up to a particular point. I'm forgetting the year right now, because Sasquatch was coined at a particular point, and Bigfoot was coined in 1958.
That's right.
In
that Humboldt Times.
In that Humboldt Times article. And so everybody says that Jerry Crew named Bigfoot, which is not exactly the case.
No. Who was it named by, David?
I forget. There was somebody who was with him, and I think this actually comes out of possibly out of the Ivan Sanderson article, or there was another one that was written. But basically, it came out of somebody was talking about how they're the Bigfoot people, because the feet were so big. And a lot of these, I mean, honestly, a lot of the other tracks weren't this large, and like, no, that's the Bigfoots. Those are the Bigfoot ones. It's kind of like, basically, this one lady was referring to them as the Bigfoot version versus like the red-eyed version or whatever, like we come up with.
Right.
And Bigfoot was born.
There it is.
Yeah. I'm trying to find this other article.
Bigfoot was born. That is for sure. Now, according to Hoaxopedia at the museumofhoaxes.com, their little snippet of this Jerry Crew fella is in August 27, 1958, while working on a construction site in Northwest California, a tractor operator named Jerry Crew found a series of massive 16-inch footprints tracked through the mud. Due to the size of the prints, the media began referring to the creature and created them as Bigfoot. The name stuck, eventually replacing Sasquatch in the popular imagination as the name for North America's legendary ape-man. It was long suspected that Crew's prank-loving boss, Ray Wallace, had created the prints by stamping carved wooden feet to his boots and stomping around in the mud. This was confirmed when Wallace died in 2002 and his family came clean with the whole story. Bigfoot believers, however, continued to insist that the prints were legitimate Sasquatch tracks.
Now, let's just say, I'm not 100% a Bigfoot believer. Like, I'm of a skeptical mind. So, but for them to say that the track that I have up here, and it like matches any of the tracks that Ray Wallace made, is asinine, and they're not looking at it. To be skeptical and to be a scophic are different. But at the same time, again, like this Sasquatch word was something that was concocted, and I'm forgetting the actual year. It might have been the 30s or like 30s to 40s. So we didn't have Sasquatch before that. They were called wild men. And then all of a sudden they were Sasquatch. And then as of 1958, and a couple articles here, and here, Jerry Crew named Bigfoot, which is not actually the case. The media really went with that.
Right.
They just said that these are the Bigfoot Sasquatch people. It's, like whatever. But this is the birth of Bigfoot. Bigfoot as a term, and like it was not something that existed prior to 1958.
And that's where it started. I mean, really, folks. I mean, prior to 1958, there were things out there were stories out there. But as far as the media was really concerned, when Bigfoot accounts and Bigfoot sightings and Bigfoot tracks were found after 1958 and Jerry Crew hit the news media, is when they started putting that stuff back into the news. You know, in the early days, 8-man stories and people who were attacked and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that stuff kind of got in cryptic little tales and stories. But as far as the actual media craze and seeing that Bigfoot equals money, it really kind of started in 1958.
Yeah, well, and Ivan Sanderson had been doing this like for longer, obviously, but that's really where
but just like all the ones
he
that
hadn't
do it
put
now,
out
he's
any.
not making any real money.
Yeah, exactly. And so he was doing his magazines and the other things like that.
He was pulling the Todd Standing.
Maybe he was a little bit broader than Todd Standing. He was pulling the broad standing, But basically,
standing in the rain.
Yeah. But so basically, it was after the Patterson-Gimlin film where he really saw dollar signs in his eyes, and then he started making his films, putting his wife in costumes and doing all that other stuff that we.
That's Ivan Marks that you're referring.
I'm sorry, Ivan. But yeah, anyway, no.
Ivan Sanderson was a media hound, media whore. But Ivan Marks.
I've crossed my wires there.
Yeah, we're gonna go into a night of Ivan Marks. He deserves a whole
a
night of his own. But but that's where the birth of Bigfoot really came from. And I thought it was kind of important for us to go back and really see, why we go back now and think what we think. Now, looking back now, David, as you see Jerry Crew and his story, what are your adult thoughts and your afterthoughts of the experience that you have now?
Well, it's interesting because of the way that it was reported on, and it's interesting because it started kind of a media cultural revolution as far as Bigfoot is concerned, so much so that people up in Yakima, Washington wanted to come back to that location with a film camera, and they got the Patterson-Gimlin film. It really did spark imagination and something about the name Bigfoot. I always was, I liked Sasquatch. It sounds a little bit more tribal, even though it's not. It's just an anglicization of a bunch of different names for the being.
Right.
But
I prefer Woody myself, but
yeah. But Bigfoot. I mean.
It's a blanket. It's a big catch-all, for all the different types of Bigfoot creatures. Maybe that's what it comes down to, is it's just one great big friggin' catch-all.
It could be, but earlier today I was listening to a broadcast that the Monster X Radio, and they had Lyle Blackburn on, and they were talking about people were criticizing his Lizard Man book because he kind of just went into this diatribe about how it was probably more likely just a Bigfoot scenario, and people were misidentifying what they were seeing. If there's a giant humanoid, and chances are, you're looking at a Bigfoot type creature, and not.
What does a Bigfoot type creature with mange look like?
Yeah, he said? What does a Bigfoot type creature that's wet and covered in mud coming out of the swamp look like? I mean,
Maybe so rustled an alligator for the chicken that was out there. Who knows?
Yeah, or whatever. But whatever the situation, that kind of it is a catch-all, and it's interesting that I bet you if for whatever reason if they named the television show on Animal Planet Finding Sasquatch, it would not have been as popular as Finding Bigfoot.
I think you're right. I absolutely think you're right. Now when I look upon the story of Jerry Crew and the documentaries over the years and the different tales of what I've seen from it, and you throw in a little pinch of the Ray Wallace and what I have experienced over the years in the woods and talking to credible people, I don't believe Jerry Crew would have been the type of man to continue to perpetrate a hoax. And that's something he would have done his entire life, because from that point on, I mean, he talked about Bigfoot. He moved on with Bigfoot. There's stories of it for years until his death. So, I mean, why would he continued to live a life that was a lie from the point on that his boss played a practical joke in 1958.
Exactly, and what else led into that? And he wasn't a fame grabber. I mean, there's pictures of him holding up his cast in these articles or whatever, but like that's really kind of all you heard about. Like the story is bigger than like the self promoter, and that's what I really like about Jerry Crew is I'm always I'm skeptical of a self promoter, and if like if he has this one thing and then it was huge because it was interesting, but that's all that was it. He wasn't continuing to capitalize on that, to my knowledge, and that makes it a really interesting find. And the fact that his footprint looks more like what we would expect a Sasquatch footprint to look like than a lot of other casts that we've ever seen. And is that the interesting thing, though, is that what's implanted in our mind? Is that what we gauge everything on? Because that was the first really good, clear track. So we'll never know if it was real or if it was fake. But if it's real, I mean that's something that's, I mean, we can look at. If it's fake, it's totally set us back to 1958 again.
And like you said, with the corresponding stories coming out of the Great White North and Oregon and Washington and other places that Ray Wallace never visited in his life ever, finding track casts on different sides of the mountains 10 years apart from what is pretty sure the same individual because the scars still line up. These are the things that lend credibility to wooden plank does not equal living foot cast. And that's what I take away from it, that Ray Wallace's family tried to make him out to be the Bob Hieronymus of that story.
And in some cases he may have been, where Bob Hieronymus is still trying to put himself into that suit, but
that fiasco. That's another night.
Yeah, that's a whole nother night. But
Bob has his own night. Bob's another good night for sure.
Yes, but no, I think that the interesting thing about Jerry Crew, first and foremost, is that he sparked our imagination with his footprint cast, and how he handled that, and he sparked the Bigfoot revolution with his single find. And I mean, if there's anybody who needs to be kind of like talked about and remembered in this field, like that's where Patterson-Gimlin. I mean, that's cool. We've all been over that. We've all argued back and forth on that.
But if it wasn't for Jerry Crew, Roger Patterson would have never been looking for Bigfoot.
Exactly. If they would have never gone to Bluff Creek if it weren't for Jerry Crew and his find. So that's what's really fantastic about this story. It's amazing.
And there you have it, folks. That is the Bigfoot life and times of Mr. Jerry Crew. And I do have a couple of special things tonight to finish this off with. First, I'm going to treat you to a Bigfoot haiku. I found this while doing some research tonight. I did not write this myself, so I will give credit to it. It does also come from the museumofhoaxes.com by their poster Mist, and it goes something like this. Large footprints in the mud, hairy beast lumbering along. Bigfoot is a-comin'. So there's our Bigfoot haiku of the week.
I'll never be able to write another one like that. That was epic.
Yeah, that was actually not bad. I mean, some of the other ones were pretty cool, but I'm not going to really get into reading haikus on the air over and over again, but I thought that was kind of neat. And
save that for the new YouTube channel I'm setting up. Bigfoot.
Yeah, Bigfoot haikus. Last week we did announce our $6 billion Indiegogo campaign, self-starter, for putting the FLIR telescope in space.
Not just a FLIR, a giant FLIR.
Yeah, a giant FLIR telescope in space. Unfortunately, I have been notified by the Department of Homeland Security that we're not allowed to attempt to put a giant FLIR space telescope up there to look for Bigfoot without NASA's approval. So we can't be like the astronaut farmer and just build some tin of shit out in the back of somebody's barn and launch it up into space. So that's not going to count. We're going to have to do that $6 billion deal. So we're going to wait a little while to start working on that campaign.
Just wait till they close NASA, and then we'll put it up.
Right, that's right. Wait till they close NASA, and then we'll put it up. Well, David, I know, buddy, you wish you had time to go out into the air, but we know what you have coming up in the future is hanging out with that beautiful little boy of yours.
That's about the thing.
He's going to outgrow those onesies so fast, you better start looking for Bigfoot shirts for him, dude. Jeez.
Yeah, I know.
Man.
It's kind of out of control now.
That kid's going to be huge. For me, I still got a few weeks until I'm kicking around town, so I will be in and out of the Oakland area. If anybody wants to go down to the Bigfoot Museum that's here in town, hit me up. I'm here in Alameda. I'll ride down with you. We can all go down and talk to Mike. Other than that, come and hang out with us at the Squatchers Lounge group at facebook.com/groups/slounge, and you can find Mitchell Wilson and Alita and me and David and Kip and a gazillion other people now. God, I put over 2,000 members into the Squatchers Lounge. Thank you, everybody. Find our fan page at facebook.com/slounge podcast. Make sure you go there and click the like, click the add to the list. And make a list for us, people, because if you don't, you won't see half of our ads. We really require you guys to click like on every time you see our ads that are out there, because it's like only seeing 10% of our likes. How are we supposed to grow if that happens? Thanks a lot, Facebook. I haven't quite figured that one out yet.
Well, and what's this with the super liking? Like, super like?
Yeah, it's like if I want to pay to boost this post, then Facebook will show it to every one of the people that like my page. But since I'm a poor bastard and I make like $1.28 on every one of these podcasts, I can't afford to do that. So if you want to go out to, never mind, I don't need your money. It's been a fun show. It really has. I really like our new format. Who are we going to talk about next week?
Well, we've brought up some really, really fantastic people, and with my wire crossing, maybe it's a good thing to disambiguate Ivan Sanderson from Ivan Marks. Maybe Ivan Marks is a good one for next week.
There you go. Ivan Marks is a good one for next week because there's lots of pictures that go along with that one. So yeah. Ivan Marks, it will be.
People like the pretty pictures.
The pretty pictures, and I like to make them all fancy with your big red circles and arrows that point down. So that's what we're going to talk about next week. And tonight, to end the show, I actually talked to the artist tonight, Mr. Tom Yamarone himself, who wrote a song about Jerry Crew, and Mr. James Bobo Fay of Finding Bigfoot actually has a writing credit on it as well. If you go out to youtube.com/big, oh no, you can't do that. Just search for Bigfoot Songs 04, and you'll find Tom Yamarone's Bigfoot song pages, and he's got 72 songs up there that are just absolutely fantastic, and we have permission tonight to play you one on the way out. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to play you part of that song on the way out tonight. I want to thank everybody for joining us for the Squatchers Lounge Podcast Season 2, Episode 22. For David Batdorf, I am the Reverend Jeff Kelly, and I am still not ready to play this song, so I'm not saying what y'all are waiting for me to say until I'm daggone good and ready. I am completely lost as to what's going on at this point because I forgot where I put it. So I'm just going to imagine like I'm doing something not stupid at the moment and just keep... I'm just going to keep talking. So, David, where... Yeah, no, I'm just... Here we go, folks.
Wait, I think you found something.
I did.
Now I picked up my paper last Monday eve, saw a picture on the front page I couldn't believe. A serious man holding a giant cast. News of this image was bound to spread fast. Well, who was this man who brought the image to us? His friends and his family say he's a guy they can trust. He saw some things on Bluff Creek he couldn't explain. Now he's all over the front page. What was his name? Jerry Crew. Oh, he knew what to do. Yeah, Jerry Crew. Those who believed him were but a few. That didn't stop Jerry, 'cause he knew what to do. Yeah, he knew what to do. He would show up for work, find his tracks in his cat. People sometimes pranked them, but this wasn't that. Now these were much deeper, and they roam far and wide. He couldn't match the depth or the 16th stride. He told his friend Bob about these strange prints. Bob showed him how to mix plaster, capture the evidence, or bring out a cast. And then we can see what kind of creature we got there and solve this mystery. Jerry Crew, oh, he knew what to do. Yeah, Jerry Crew, those who believe him were but a few. That didn't stop Jerry, 'cause he knew what to do. He knew what to do.
Happy birthday, Tom. Thanks for watching, everybody. May the Squatch be with you.